Most people believe that winning requires force. They believe that the loudest voice wins, that the strongest fighter survives, and that the most aggressive person in the room controls the outcome. Sun Tzu watched generals make this mistake for decades. He watched armies with superior numbers lose to smaller forces. He watched powerful men fall to those who seemed insignificant. And after years of observation, he arrived at a conclusion so dangerous that it changed the course of history. The battle is decided before it begins, and the weapon that decides it has no blade. Sun Tzu understood something most people never realize. Victory does not belong to the strongest. It belongs to the most prepared. It belongs to those who can read a situation before others even notice there is one. It belongs to those who have already won in their minds, in their planning, and in their positioning, long before a single move is made in the open. In a world where most people react, the strategist has already acted. In a world where most people are emotional, the strategist is already calm. And in a world where most people are trying to win, the strategist has already made losing impossible. What you are about to learn in this video are not motivational quotes. These are not abstract ideas from a philosophy classroom. These are 7 ruthless, battle-tested tactics from one of the greatest strategic minds the world has ever known. Tactics that apply not just to war, but to every negotiation, every conflict, every relationship, and every moment where power hangs in the balance. If you have ever felt outmaneuvered, overwhelmed, or outplayed, this is what Sun Tzu would tell you. Pay close attention, because this knowledge does not circulate in ordinary conversations. It never has. The first tactic is the one most people never even consider, and it is the foundation of everything else. Sun Tzu called it winning before the battle begins, while others are preparing to react. The strategist is already 3 moves ahead. While others are sharpening their swords on the morning of the battle, the strategist has spent months mapping the terrain, understanding the enemy's psychology, identifying every weakness, and constructing conditions where the outcome is predetermined. Most people treat strategy as something that happens during conflict. Sun Tzu knew that real strategy happens before conflict is visible to anyone else. Think about how this applies to your daily life. When someone enters a negotiation without preparation, they are already losing. When someone walks into a confrontation driven by emotion rather than intelligence, the outcome is already decided. When someone reacts to circumstances instead of engineering them, they have surrendered their power before a single word is spoken. The strategist, on the other hand, prepares in silence. They study the personalities involved. They anticipate objections before they arise. They create options and exit routes that others have not thought of. By the time the conversation begins, they are not hoping to win. They already know they will. Sun Tzu wrote, "Every battle is won or lost before it is ever fought." This is not a metaphor. It is a precise description of how power operates. The preparation that no one sees creates the outcome that everyone witnesses. The work done in private determines the result displayed in public. This is why the most dangerous person in any room is rarely the most vocal. It is the one who arrived already knowing. It is the one who planned while others slept. It is the one who is calm because they are not hoping. They are executing a plan already set in motion. If you adopt nothing else from this video, adopt this. Your preparation is your weapon, and it must be sharpened in secret. But preparation alone is not enough. Even the most prepared person can be defeated if they cannot control the one variable that destroys more strategies than any enemy ever could: their own emotions. This is where the second tactic becomes not just important, but essential. Sun Tzu understood that emotion is not a strength. It is a signal. When you react emotionally, you reveal your pressure points. You tell your opponent exactly where to press, exactly what matters to you, and exactly how to throw you off balance. The person who remains still while others move frantically is not passive. They are operating on a completely different level. Consider what happens when someone provokes you in a meeting, in a conversation, or in a relationship. The moment you react with anger, frustration, or defensiveness, you have given away something priceless. You have shown them that their words have power over you. You have confirmed that the provocation worked. And worse, you have shifted the dynamic entirely in their favor. Now they are in control, and you are responding to them, which means you are playing their game on their terms, inside a frame they constructed for you. Sun Tzu would call this a catastrophic strategic error, not because being emotional is weak in a moral sense, but because it is tactically devastating. The practice of controlled stillness is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about refusing to let your emotions make decisions for you. It is about developing the discipline to feel the heat of a situation and remain cool enough to think. The strategist observes what triggers others. They study reactions the way a scientist studies data. Every time someone loses composure, they reveal something. And the one who never loses composure reveals nothing, collects everything, and moves with information that others never had the discipline to gather. Silence is not absence of power. Silence is power in its purest, most terrifying form. And here is what most people miss entirely. The person who remains calm under pressure is not just gathering information. They are changing the psychology of everyone around them. When one person in a room refuses to escalate, it disrupts the emotional momentum that conflict depends on. When one person absorbs pressure without breaking, others begin to question whether their strategy is working. When one person seems genuinely unaffected by what should affect them, people begin to wonder what that person knows that they do not. Stillness communicates power without words. It plants doubt in the minds of opponents. And doubt, controlled, strategic doubt, is one of the most powerful weapons in Sun Tzu's arsenal. Which brings us to the third tactic, the one that Sun Tzu placed at the center of his entire philosophy, the one that makes generals uncomfortable because it requires a kind of moral flexibility that most people are not willing to develop. He wrote it plainly and without apology. All warfare is based on deception, not some warfare, not warfare when necessary, all of it. If you are not willing to manage perception, you are not playing the game. You are being played by it. Deception, as Sun Tzu understood it, is not about lying to destroy others. It is about controlling what others believe so that they make decisions that serve your strategy rather than their own. The most effective form of strategic deception is not the dramatic kind that plays out in spy films. It is far more subtle. It is appearing weaker than you are, so that your opponent underestimates you. It is showing strength in one direction while you move in another. It is making people believe you want something you do not want, so that they guard the wrong position. It is creating the appearance of confusion when you are completely clear. It is behaving predictably until the exact moment when predictability is your greatest liability, and then doing something no one saw coming. Sun Tzu built entire military campaigns on this principle, and they worked not because his armies were the largest, but because his opponents were never fighting the real battle. They were fighting the one he had constructed for them. In modern life, this principle plays out in negotiations where the person who reveals their desperation loses. It plays out in social dynamics where the person who needs approval surrenders power to those who withhold it. It plays out in business where the competitor who telegraphs their next move allows others to preempt them. Strategic perception management is not manipulation for cruelty's sake. It is the intelligence to understand that others are always forming a picture of who you are, and that you can either allow that picture to be formed randomly, or you can be intentional about what you allow to be seen. The strategist chooses intention every time, and the difference between those two choices is often the difference between winning and losing. But Sun Tzu warned about something even more dangerous than an opponent who deceives you. He warned about the strategist who attacks the wrong target. This is the fourth tactic, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood principle in the entire art of war. Most people, when they face an opponent, instinctively go after their strongest point. They challenge power with power. They meet confidence with confidence. They respond to aggression with equal aggression. Sun Tzu considered this not just a mistake but a waste of resources, of time, of energy, and of opportunity. The supreme art of war, he wrote, is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And the way you do that is by never attacking where they are strong. Every person, every organization, every system has a weakness. not a visible one. Those are too obvious and usually well defended. The weakness that matters is the hidden one, the one that the opponent has not named, that they perhaps have not even identified in themselves. It might be vanity, the need to be seen as the most intelligent person in the room. It might be fear, a specific, private anxiety that drives their decisions in ways even they do not fully recognize. It might be an emotional dependency, a reputation they are desperate to protect, or a resource they cannot afford to lose. The strategist finds that weakness not through aggression, but through observation, through patience, through listening more than speaking and watching more than acting. Once you identify the real vulnerability, you do not attack it immediately. That would be reckless and obvious. Instead, you position yourself. You arrange the conditions of the situation so that the pressure falls naturally on that weakness without you appearing to apply it at all. This is what separates brute force from strategy. Brute force is loud, direct, and often costly. Strategy is quiet, indirect, and precise. When the right pressure meets the right weakness at the right moment, the result is not a battle. It is a collapse. And collapses, Sun Tzu knew, are far more efficient than battles. They require less energy, leave fewer scars, and produce more complete victories. By this point in what Sun Tzu taught, most students would believe they were ready. They had prepared invisibly, they had mastered their own emotions, they had learned to control perception and to strike at vulnerability rather than strength. But Sun Tzu always saved his most ruthless lesson for last, because none of the previous tactics matter, not one of them, if your opponent can predict you. Predictability is the death of strategy. It is the one thing that negates preparation, cancels the advantage of stillness, exposes deception, and reveals the weakness you have been carefully targeting. If they know what you will do next, they are always one step ahead of you. Even if you are the more intelligent, the more prepared, the more controlled person in the conflict. The fifth tactic, and the most advanced of all, is also the fifth and the seventh combined into the deepest principle Sun Tzu ever articulated. Become unreadable. Not mysterious for the sake of ego. Not silent to seem interesting. Unreadable as a deliberate, calculated, strategic discipline. The unreadable person cannot be manipulated because manipulation requires knowing what someone values, what they fear, and how they will respond. The unreadable person cannot be provoked because provocation requires a known reaction. The unreadable person cannot be outmaneuvered because outmaneuvering requires anticipating the next move. When you become genuinely unreadable, you do not just win battles, you make others reluctant to start them. How does one become unreadable? It begins with the discipline of not explaining yourself. Every explanation is a map. Every justification is a window into your reasoning. Every time you over-communicate your motives, you give others the tools they need to predict, counter, and control you. The unreadable person speaks with purpose and stops. They do not fill silence with reassurance. They do not perform transparency to make others comfortable. They allow ambiguity to work for them, because ambiguity forces others to guess, and guessing exhausts people. It places the cognitive burden on them, not on you. Sun Tzu understood that the mind of an opponent who cannot figure you out is not relaxed. It is occupied. It is burning energy trying to solve a puzzle you have deliberately made unsolvable. But becoming unreadable is more than controlling what you say. It is controlling what you reveal through your behavior. It is the discipline of not celebrating too visibly when things go well, so that others cannot track your momentum. It is the restraint to not react when provoked, so that others cannot locate your triggers. It is the patience to stay in a position longer than feels comfortable, so that your timing is never where others expect it. It is the willingness to sometimes do nothing, even when action feels urgent, because inaction is a move that most people never account for. The strategist who can sit with stillness when others expect urgency has developed one of the rarest and most powerful skills in the entire landscape of human conflict. Sun Tzu also taught something that runs against every instinct most people have been raised with. He taught that you must know your enemy, But you must know yourself first, because the greatest vulnerability any strategist carries is self-deception, the belief that you are more prepared than you are, more controlled than you are, more hidden than you are. The person who overestimates their own stillness betrays themselves at the critical moment. The person who believes their deception is perfect becomes careless and predictable. The person who thinks they have found every weakness in their opponent misses the one that matters because they stopped looking. Know yourself with brutal honesty. That is the discipline that keeps every other tactic from collapsing under the weight of your own blind spots. There is a pattern that runs through every one of these 7 tactics, and it is worth naming directly. The pattern is this: the greatest power moves are the ones that never look like power moves. The preparation happens in private. The stillness looks like indifference. The deception looks like openness. The surgical strike on weakness looks like coincidence. And the unreadable nature of the true strategist looks to the untrained eye like simply being difficult to understand. This is by design. Power that announces itself invites resistance. Power that conceals itself invites underestimation. And underestimation, as every student of Sun Tzu eventually discovers, is not a problem. It is an advantage. Think about every high-stakes conflict you have witnessed or experienced in your own life. The moments where things shifted dramatically, where outcomes surprised everyone. Look closely at those moments. In almost every case, you will find that the turning point was not the most visible action. It was something that happened earlier, quieter and less noticed. A decision made in private, a reaction withheld, a perception managed, a weakness found and held in reserve, a moment of stillness in the middle of pressure. The victories that seem sudden are never sudden. They are the result of everything that preceded them, everything no one was watching at the time. Sun Tzu built his entire life's work on a philosophy that most people resist because it challenges something they were taught to believe. They were taught that honesty is always the best policy. But the strategist knows that selective disclosure is not dishonesty, it is intelligence. They were taught that strength wins. But the strategist knows that strength applied to the wrong target is just expensive noise. They were taught that speed is decisive. But the strategist knows that patience is the rarest and most decisive weapon of all. Every conventional belief about conflict, competition, and power contains within it a trap. The student of Sun Tzu learns to see those traps before walking into them. This is where most people make a fatal mistake. They learn these principles, they understand them intellectually, they can explain them clearly. And then, the moment they find themselves in a real conflict with real stakes and real emotions, they forget all of it. The pressure of the moment overrides the intelligence of the principle. The instinct to react wins over the discipline to observe. The desire to be understood overwhelms the strategy of remaining hidden. This is human. It is expected. But it is also the exact moment that separates the person who knows strategy from the person who practices it. Knowledge without execution is not strategy. It is philosophy, useful, but not decisive. The practice of these tactics requires something that no book can give you and no video can install in you directly. It requires repetition under pressure. It requires the willingness to fail at being strategic and to learn from that failure with complete honesty. It requires that you begin in small situations. The conversation where you choose observation over reaction, the negotiation where you hold your position longer than feels comfortable, the conflict where you find the real weakness instead of attacking the obvious one, and you build from there. Strategy is not a talent, it is a practice. And like any practice, it becomes available to you in the moments that matter only when you have built it through the moments that seem to not matter. Sun Tzu spent his life surrounded by war, by death, and by the consequences of strategic failure. He understood more viscerally than most people ever will what it costs to be outmaneuvered. He also understood what it feels like to engineer a victory so complete that the opponent never fully understands how it happened. That feeling, that clarity, that control, that absolute certainty that comes from knowing you are executing a plan that has already worked before it began, is what he was trying to give to every student of his work. Not arrogance, not cruelty, clarity, the kind of clarity that only comes when you stop reacting to the world and start designing your response to it. The real lesson of the art of war is not about defeating enemies. It is about becoming the kind of person who cannot be defeated. And the most remarkable thing about Sun Tzu's approach is this: the more completely you embody these principles, the fewer battles you have to fight. Because when people sense that you are prepared, they hesitate. When they sense that you are unreadable, they become cautious. When they understand, even without being able to articulate it, that engaging with you will cost them more than they are willing to pay, they begin to look elsewhere. The supreme victory, Sun Tzu wrote, is the one achieved without battle. And the path to that victory is paved with every principle explored in this video. You now carry something rare, not a tactic for one situation, but a philosophy for navigating every situation where power, conflict, and strategy are at play, which, if you are paying attention, is most of them. The question is not whether you understand what Sun Tzu taught. The question is what you will do with it in the next conversation, the next negotiation, the next moment, where someone tries to determine what you are made of. Because that moment is coming. And when it arrives, you will either react or you will execute. You will either play the game others have designed for you, or you will play the one you designed yourself. Sun Tzu made his choice 25 centuries ago. Now it is time to make yours.